All right, guys, I'm excited about this one. Today we have Jason from Still Austin, and we're going to talk all types of stuff about Still Austin. We're going to dip into a couple of their whiskeys. Let's get into it. Jason, thank you so much for coming on here and hanging out with me. This has been a little bit in the making. I saw you at the Texas Whiskey Festival, and we hit back up again, and I'm really glad you were able to come on here and hang out with me, and brought over a couple of samples, and I'm really appreciate you're doing that. We're going to dip into those into a minute. If you don't mind, to kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourself and any socials you want to link or anything like that. We can do it again at the end, and they'll always be posted in the link down below.
Awesome. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Jason Herring. I'm the Education Director and Brand Experience Manager over at Still Austin Whiskey Company. I guess a little bit about me is that I have been doing beverage now for about 20 years. Got into the game with wine. Then, I guess it would have been 2018 is when I met Chris Seals, the founder of Still Austin. Joined the team kind of in a partial capacity at that point, still living in Dallas. Moved down to Austin in 2020 and have been part of the team at the distillery every day basically since.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you didn't get in on the ground floor, but you got in pretty quick as soon as you could. And
it's the old Texas thing. I got there as soon as I could. Exactly.
Right. Exactly. And of course, you got there right at 2020 when everything was going crazy. So yeah, no, that's awesome. Before we get too much further, I want to get a whiskey breathing for us because I don't know if you care anything about neck pour, but it is a thing I've heard. So today we are going to dip into the Still Austin straight rye whiskey, and I will let you guys know. I will let you guys know right away that I've already had this, and it is amazing. So we're not getting into anything I don't already know about, which fortunately and unfortunately for me being a Texas boy and you being a Texas boy, Still Austin is around us a lot. So it's easier for us to get our hands on. Obviously, your distribution is fairly well, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, no, Still Austin is a mainstay in Texas whiskey as of right now. Can you give us a little background on Still Austin itself?
Oh, absolutely. So let's see. I guess we were established in 2015 by Christopher Seals and his father, Cleveland Seals. Cleveland was newly retired and really wanted to kind of do something. He has, been working his whole life and, couldn't sit still for a little while. And, he talked with Chris Seals, his son, and was like, you know what? I think I want to open a craft distillery. I think that's what I want to do. I'm going to need you to help me. And so the way that Chris tells the story is, so Chris Seals, our CEO and president, founder, his background is in risk assessment in the financial sector, right?
Okay.
So he took a very pragmatic approach to this with his father, and it's just like, okay, Dad. So you know what? We're going to put together a report. Let's kind of see, is it feasible to open a craft distillery in Texas? Kind of is like, oh yeah, we'll see how far this gets, and maybe Dad will pick up golf or something like that. But then as they started crunching numbers, all of a sudden, a little bit of time went by. Laws started changing here in Texas, which made it a lot easier to begin opening a distillery. And just all of the dominoes kind of fell in place. So when he started realizing that there's something he could do, it was then what approach do we want to take and where do we want to go from that? So I always tell people when they visit the distillery, when Chris opened this distillery, back in 2017 when we began distilling, the idea is that everything we make needs to be a representation of the people here in Central Texas. We need to kind of highlight the artists, musicians, the scientists that make the community down here unique. And then on top of that, to be able to do that, we had to follow that second principle, and that's to make sure that we actually make everything we can here in Central Texas. And that means we need to mill, mash, ferment, distill, bottle, barrel, age, all that stuff down here. We even tried to see if we could, source grains down here in Austin, but, for the capacity that we're capable of, that wasn't a possibility. We were really, really lucky that we were able to meet Justin and his family up at Lone Star Family Farms. And now most of our grains are actually sourced from a single family farm to really kind of shrink that supply chain for us as well. We're buying everything from Texas. Malted barley is malted up in Fort Worth, Texas. So we're not putting a bunch of, grain on
Yeah.
planes, like it's all local as local as local can be, and that's really important for all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you're saying it's Texas whiskey, you're doing as much as you, and I understand there is some grains, especially because we'll get into this a little later, but especially since you do a lot of specialty grains, some of those are not made in Texas, and I get that.
Actually, every grain we use is made in Texas.
Really?
Every
Okay.
single one. Red corn, blue corn, Oaxacan green corn, every scrap of it.
Okay, you blew my mind on that one, because I know there's, and not throwing any shade to anybody else, but I know there's a couple other distilleries are having to source some of their more exotic grains, which, heirloom is exotic when they used to be all over the place. Anyway, that's a whole nother story, but, and it's just really cool that you guys are trying to stay as true to the Texas, and every one of your bottles has that certified Texas whiskey label on it, and so we've talked about this multiple times on this show, that's just another marker that you guys meet that says, hey, we're doing the right thing. We're trying to do everything Texas wants us to do in the right way, and I think it shows in the product. If you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about this straight rye that you have right here.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to grab a bottle of the straight rye, but I'll join you with its cast strength counterpart if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have that one here as well.
Oh, well, here, I'll wait for you. Okay.
Then. Yeah.
I don't want to get ahead of the
To
game.
me, it's a really nice nose on it. Obviously, it's been sitting in a shed for a minute, so it's a little warm, actually, temperature wise. I got the AC going, but it doesn't help a whole lot in here when it's 105 or whatever it was today. It's just a really nice
always
nose.
Make at the distillery is a good Texas whiskey should taste good warm. Chances are we're going to drink it that way.
Yeah.
I agree with you on the nose. I think a lot of what you'll get on the nose, and probably what you're kind of discovering on the palate, a lot of that comes from the whole process. I hope. Let me tell me what you find on the palate, though. I'd be interested to hear your notes. You have a great palate.
Like it's not typical to most ryes. Most ryes are super spicy and very like rye bread, or very grainy, if you want to say grainy like that. This is real subtle. It does have some spice, but it's not like cinnamon punching you in the face. It's more like cardamom, or maybe a little anise, not star anise, but a little anise. My buddy Alan Bishop, who used to work for Spirits French Lick, he loves making absinthe and stuff like that. So he's kind of got me into some of these other liqueurs and stuff like that, and kind of sampling those to give into tasting notes as well. So it's kind of fun playing around with other spirits, and we'll talk about some of your other spirits later as well. And then when you go back to the nose, it's all the regular whiskey notes, right? It's the caramels, the sugar, the almost a little cherry in there as well. But on the taste, I might go in for one more. It's really soft and inviting, and it's 49% alcohol, so it's not a low bottom shelf or bottom, barely legal. It's just really nice. It has a lot of like maybe almost eucalyptus notes on it or something like that.
That's a note I call a lot.
It's really nice and subtle. I guess is the best way to put it. I'm sure it goes great in a cocktail. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I think both of the ryes do. I prefer the artist, so the one you're enjoying now. I kind of enjoy that in more of your like traditional, like boozy whiskey cocktails, things like Old Fashioned, Manhattan, Bouvardier, so on and so forth. Because at that, just under 100 proof, you should be able to get that whiskey to poke through any, simple syrup, vermouth, bitter liqueur you throw at it. But like you're saying, it's softer. I get a lot of like burnt orange peel. Eucalyptus is a note I call a lot. Cardamom is a really good call on that as well. It's just a little bit softer, a little bit floral than most other ryes. A lot of that has to do for two reasons that I always like to call out. First and foremost is Nancy Fraley and the slow water reduction process. By using that slow water reduction process, it really helps give the whiskey the tools it needs to kind of go the distance and get those few extra years of age while still maintaining a lot of, I don't want to say youthfulness, but it's vibrance, it's brightness, you know what I mean? Without getting too dense, too spicy, too oaky. And then the second thing is that John is really, really big into rye and rye flavors. And so what he's found out through trial and error is that the fermentation techniques that we use are able to actually pull out a little bit more of those fruity esters which allows the rye to kind of, once again, be a little bit softer, a little bit more approachable. It's not quite as much of an acquired taste as other ryes. I always say there's rye whiskey, and this sounds so terrible, but there's rye whiskey and then there's still Austin rye whiskey. Like it's just so different, from the 100% unmalted rye mash bill to the Texas grown hybrid fall rye to slow water reduction to the Texas heat. It's just got a lot of combinations of different things that you don't see all kind of thrown together with other rye whiskeys.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to stop you right there because I heard something and it perked my ear. You said 100% unmalted rye.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you're using an enzymatic liquid or something to get the conversion. Is that correct?
I mean, you have to down here if you're using, closed fermentation in the Texas heat. Like, if we had, maybe if we had open fermentation and we were in a little bit cooler part of the state, or we had like a type of yeast strain that somebody, made for us that could just, deal with it. But that's not commonplace. I don't believe, at least. No. So yeah, and I always want to point out too, when you hear people say that they're adding enzymatic or yeast nutrients, we're adding literally the same thing that you find in malted barley. That's the reason why we malted barley in the first place.
Right.
It's the same natural things that you would find in your barley. We're just adding a little bit more of it because the barley might not be able to add. In the case of the rye, it's 100% unmalted. So to kind of get that really bold flavor that we need out of the rye, we also need it to ferment. And
Right. No. It's really cool because like when people think about 100% rye, they're thinking, wow, it's going to be an overload of rye. It's going to just attack your palate with the rye flavors. And it doesn't. I mean, we've already said that. It doesn't. It's very subtle. It's very it comes in there, and the more you sip it, the more it presents a little differently. Each sip you get into it, it presents a little bit more. Your palate gets acclimated to some things, and then other things come in. Like right there, I got almost like rye bread with like butter on it. Like almost savory tasting, which is to me is super nice. The evolution of a whiskey when you're sipping on it, that to me is a big deal. So it's really cool. It's really cool.
Fresh pumpernickel toast with orange marmalade and fresh mint leaves.
Okay. I like that. Okay. All right. So you guys have a very, and I might be jumping the gun, and if I am, let me know. You guys have a very unique still setup. Now, it's not that unique, but for Texas, I know there's maybe one other one, but it's not as big. You guys use a continuous still. Is that correct?
It's not just that we use, yes, we do use a continuous still. We have a 42-foot tall column still that we've nicknamed Nancy after Allison Hayes' character in Attack the 50-Foot Woman. What makes the still impressive, though, is that it's kind of an experimental design that was designed by Mike Delavante, a former production manager over at Ray & Nephew. For anyone who doesn't know who Ray & Nephew is, they're the folks behind Appleton Rum down there in the Caribbean, making award-winning rums for years. So he was their production manager for something like 40 years, and he's the guy that designed the still. And it was a little bit too experimental even for his time. So we purchased the design, or I would license, I'm not sure. We got a hold of the design. We sent it off to Forsyths in Scotland. We had it built. And so the interesting thing is we're using a high ester rum column still to produce American whiskey. And that's kind of the interesting thing about it. So I always, if you ever get the chance to visit the distillery again, one of the fun things to do is try to sample the new make that we do, particularly the unaged whiskey or the White Lightning, the new make, whatever you want to call it, that we use to make our gin. So our gin starts off as whiskey. Instead of throwing it in a barrel, we redistill it and add botanicals. So that stuff is over 90% alcohol by volume, and it's 70% rye. It's delicious. That rye is bright and fruity and vanilla-y, and there's 30% corn, so you get that nice kind of like pancake batter on the new make at 90% alcohol by volume.
Wow.
And a lot of that has to do with the ester content you're able to pull from that still. I know that's kind of nerdy, but basically the still is just able to get some really great oil concentration while also maintaining a high alcohol by volume. So we can pull off some literal miracles using the still.
That's awesome. And don't worry about going nerdy. I mean, I've done multiple episodes on yeast, so don't worry about
cool, sweet, yeah.
because my listeners, they really like the deep end of the pool. Obviously, we love talking about the product and the brand and the backstory and all that, but like getting in the deep end, and the hard lines and the mistakes that are happening and stuff. We just love all that stuff as well. I do, and I know they do as well because they tell me. But so it's really cool. You're like, they had to redo the roof line and put in the whole
we
thing
had to tear out a section of the roof, poke a hole in it, and then build a chimney, a literal chimney to go up, like with a bunch of exhaust fans on top. And like on a day like today, climbing up to that 4th story where the rectification plate's on that still, it's brutal there. I'm sure it is. And so what you're able to do with those who might not know with a continuous still is you're able to pull it off at pretty much whatever proof you wanted. Is that correct? Yes and no. Within reason.
Right.
Within reason. So yeah, I mean, essentially you can Nancy, our still, because it's so different, we've figured out how to do what we want on it, and we're really good at kind of adapting. They've made some other crazy things on that still as well, but I don't want to make it sound like it's an easy thing to use. It's definitely its own kind of beast. I think the biggest benefit is that by using specifically our still, because of being designed to capture higher oil content from in the spirit, the best benefit is now we can kind of get the perfect kind of pot still style distillate continuously. Okay. So we can run it 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, while still getting this super high quality, super rich, great mouthfeel, silky, high quality new make. And I think that's probably the best benefit. We do have a little, we do have a little control over the proof, but there's just like a pot still, there's things it can't do. There's things that the column still can't do. So I don't want to underplay the work that the guys have to do, because they definitely do a lot of work wrangling it and trying to get it the correct proof and all that. So
yeah, it's not just setting a button and walking away from it. Next thing you know, you got 80 barrels of whiskey sitting there. So
yeah, and it's not as easy as running like a rectification column attached to like a pot still either, because it's Nancy comes with all of her own, and Nancy still again comes with all of her own kind of things that we kind of have to keep an eye on, and they're really good at running it. It's taken us almost 7 years, but over the last few years we've really kind of gotten it down to a science. But it's the whole system that we have to kind of make sure is all working together, from the fermenters, the cook, the still, the steam, water cooling, and it's all crazy.
So another thing that I wanted the listeners to know is this whiskey's 2 years old. Now, obviously, it probably can have some older stuff in it, but it's just 2 years old, which I know for Texas is a lot. But like the flavors that are coming off of it remind me of a much older whiskey, especially a rye whiskey. Now, I've heard in the past that rye whiskey actually can mature into what it needs to be a little bit faster than, say, a bourbon. So I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but in 2 years it would be equivalent to like a 6-year bourbon, supposedly. So the fact that you guys are able to get all the flavor that you are in a smaller amount of time, you're not having to sit on it for 6 years for it to develop those flavors. That really shows you're able to make it a little quicker. Ergo, make a little bit of money, which that's the whole point of a company, is to make a little bit of money at least. But yet you're still not compensating flavor and the awesomeness of the whiskey, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I do want to do a little clarification though. While the label does say at least 2 years, that's just to denote that everything is straight whiskey. It's all aged at least 2 years. In actuality, for both of the white labels, so the musician and the artist, as well as both of the cask strengths, all the liquid in those bottles are probably closer to 3 years. The youngest barrels we'll use for any of this are going to be maybe a month or two younger than that 3 year mark. Most of those barrels on average are about 3 years. A few can be older than that. We've had that same at least 2 years since we made the label back in 2018. We just have not changed that. But as we're getting older, whiskey's creeping up there. John has a really big, he would really like to see over the next couple of years, we might be able to get a minimum 3 or even minimum 4 on some of these bottles. And if you want to get into aging later, John's got some really, really great things to say about that also. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify that it is older than the two.
Yeah, no, and I didn't mean to come across it like, oh, this is a young whiskey, don't drink it. No.
Oh no, I didn't think you did either.
What I was just trying to say, like, because like in Kentucky they don't touch it for 6-8 years, so the fact that you guys are able to get the flavor that you are even in 3 years, that's pretty amazing what you're able to pull off of there. And you guys have a strange way of fermenting, and you do the water thing. So like there's so many other factors in there other than just the barrels. Obviously you're getting good barrels. I don't know what cooperage y'all are using, or if you can disclose that. There's some
I happily disclose that. We use an independent stave company for most of our barrels. Sometimes we'll use Kelvin Cooperage, and then John has been he spent some time in France with Nancy Fraley just recently, and he's been bitten by the French oak bug. So don't be shocked if in the future you see some interesting Still Austin French oak releases as well.
Oh, I can't wait for that. So like maybe a double oak or something like that.
So we've actually done some double new oak before as our distillery reserve release programs, that stuff that we do just at the distillery. Very, very possible to see that in the near future also again. And then of course the barrel finishing program we've been doing for those releases, like in sherry barrels, Pedro Jimenez barrels, cognac barrels. We've done a bunch of those, released distillery only, of course.
Right, absolutely. Because I mean, you can ship certain things, but it's like I've talked about this multiple times, not with you obviously, but like getting shelf space in a liquor store is a big deal, and you don't want to have 14 SKUs out there that you're trying to get on the shelf space. Do a couple, get them right, get them to love the brand, and then they'll come to the distillery and they can have some special perks, if you know what I mean. So, yeah. And you guys do. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying we would love to. Maybe dropping the ball a little bit earlier on this, but we're looking to, over the next 2 years, up our production considerably so that we can make more of those interesting things along with more of our regular lineup. But like, I think one of the things, probably our most popular distillery reserve release is what we call our Monster Mash. Are you familiar with that? Mm-hmm. So it's forgive me, the mash bill eludes me, but it's 5-grain whiskey essentially. This last year, most of it was malted. What makes those hard to do is that we can Nancy, the still, makes a single run, produces around 6 barrels. So we can do a single run of something like that Monster Mash, right? But we also still need to fill the need for our other products because people still want cast strength. They want the bottled and bonds, so we need to have time for that. But if we have some downtime in production, we'll be like, all right, let's make some freaking Monster Mash, guys. So, but when those 6 barrels are gone, those 6 barrels are gone. And so it's just those. And a lot of distilleries are that way. I think everyone needs to be able to make their main products to be able to supply everybody. So you just can't make too many of the experiments unless that's what you do. Which maybe, hopefully, in the future, we might be able to have that be one of the many things that we do. So
absolutely. So you guys are innovative. Okay, no, let's not go there. I want to talk about, and if I'm sure you can see how I change subjects like automatically. So on your label, they are all specifically a little bit different, and they're made by an artist. Is that correct? Can you?
Yep, they're made by Mark Burkhart. Yeah, his name is Mark Burkhart. I think it's the Texas State artist, actually, currently. He is known for doing artwork for all kinds of great, crazy causes. He does artwork for Texas Monthly. He's done things for major fashion labels, all of that. We are absolutely so lucky that when we asked him to design some labels for this plucky young startup brand, Still Austin, that he agreed. He decided to kind of do avatars for each one of the spirits. So they're not actual people, models, anything like that. So like for the artist that we were just enjoying, she's called the artist because I think it's a little on the nose, as you can tell. Like she's an artist. She's using her paints and all that. So it's rye whiskey. You've got the flaming hair coming off to kind of signify the spiciness of the rye. And then you've got the little tanager bird kind of up there in the corner. The tanager is a little red bird that migrates from Canada down to Argentina and back. It hangs out sometimes in Texas and populate trees. And basically, you might be driving down, 35 through Waco, and look over and just see a bright red tree, and it's like, it's not fall, it's the middle of summer. Well, it's a bunch of tanagers in that tree. So we've decided to put that little bird on each one of the labels. And I think the musician for the bourbon label kind of sums it up best, because on that label, the tanager is the same color as the musician's lipstick. So we like to say, or for our Mark likes to say that the musician represents Nancy, the still. The bird, because it's the same color as the musician's lipstick, it's the song off of Nancy's lips, or the spirit that comes off of the still. It travels label to label, just like we hope the spirit travels place to place, person to person.
That's super cool. That is super cool. And so like each one of your releases has a different picture on it. And I know you guys have recently, within the year, a year, have released the Bottle and Bond, and they each have a separate label. And they were made by the same artist. Is that correct?
Made by the same artist. Yep.
Awesome. And
those are just kind of representing the seasons. Yeah. Right.
And those are very cool. All of them are very cool labels, but those are a little bit different. They're not the normal labels. So it's really cool. Kind of go into the whole Bottled and Bond. What the mindset was behind that, if you can, and kind of give us the background behind it, because there's some very unique bottlings in there, if you can.
So for us, when we first were, starting off, like in the talks of what kind of whiskey do we want to make, making a Bottled and Bond was there. In our minds, Bottled and Bond is the ultimate for American whiskey. It means that you jumped through every one of the hoops you could possibly jump through to make the best possible product that you possibly can. Specifically, the rule in Bottled and Bond that we thought was really interesting was that it must all be made and distilled in a 6-month distilling season. So either the first 6 months of the year or the second 6 months of the year, meaning that you can't really pick and choose barrels to blend together, from that are older and younger and all of that. Like, all the barrels you made for 6 months better be good, or else you can't kind of do these. And so with that, we're like, okay, that's a challenge that, we're up for. And if we're going to do that, so let's take our mash bills that we're trying to master, that 100% rye mash bill and the 70-35 mash bill of the musician, and let's clearly do those as Bottled and Bond. But what else can we do? Where can we kind of push the envelope? And that's where John kind of got the idea to do the blue and the red corn. John is an American patriot, my friend. Red, white, and blue. He's always wanted to do kind of an American whiskey kind of thing. He may still have one in the works. But he was just like, we need to round out the mash bills. Since we're doing we have a white corn mash bill, let's do a red corn mash bill. Let's not do what everyone else is doing with the Bloody Butcher and stuff too. Let's get something a little bit interesting, something with some more heritage. And that's where the Jimmy Red Corn came in. And then the blue corn was kind of the next thing, because blue corn in Texas just it's blue corn in the Southwest. We knew that was going to be one of the stops that we did as well. So it was just kind of like, all right, well, so now that we have these interesting mash bills, let's just go for gold with them, as opposed to trying to release them young or something like that. Let's just try to do it right. We'll do small distillations of them, and we'll put them away for the 4 years, and let's hope that they're fantastic when they come out. The slow water reduction is kind of interesting with those as well. Slow water reduction with those starts a lot earlier, and they, over the course of 2/3 of the year, sometimes we can, for at least the first round, we would proof those down via slow water reduction, which is normally not the case. We normally use slow water reduction to kind of just control how the whiskey's interacting with the barrel. This was also using it to kind of proof it down over the course of 6, 7, 8, 9 months, almost to the point where it was, I think it proofed it like 103, 105, and then do the blend, and then proof it down finally after the blend.
That's super cool, because I mean, and we've talked about this before as well, but like, doing that slow water reduction in the barrel, you're still getting all the influence, and every time you add the water, more flavors come out of that wood, because it has things that are water soluble and things that are ethanol soluble. So when you fluctuate the water flow like that, it just makes, and I feel it makes it a lot more cohesive of a whiskey, other than dumping it at 125 and proofing it down to 40. That to me, it adds way too much water for one, and it just, I don't know, it just kind of disjoins it a little bit. We're getting a storm here, actually. Yay! Hopefully it doesn't mess with the connection. So while you were talking, I did open up the cask strength. the cast strength guy. I haven't finished the other one, but because I kind of wanted to do a little side by side of them. Now this one is coming in at 59%. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Some bottles might actually be 58%. Actually, the one I have here is 58%. We just recently lowered the proof on the barrel entry proof for these, and so that means the normal proof is going to come down as well.
Right, absolutely.
Same thought there is kind of like what we're talking with slow water reduction. It just kind of, I mean, do you mind if I backtrack just a little bit as we get into this? And
please.
So one of the other things that slow water reduction kind of helps do is because it gets so hot here in Texas, not just because of how hot, but also how quickly it can go from hot to cold. The barrels move very, very quickly, and that's how Texas whiskeys get the reputation for aging quickly. But they're moving so quickly, like you said, they can't break down a lot of those water-soluble sugars. So the slow water reduction, specifically down here in Texas, can kind of help that. But by starting it at different times, you can kind of influence the direction the whiskey's going to kind of take. Not really flavor profile, but how it's going to hold up to age. So you could start slow water reduction at an early time, maybe get a longer aging period, or maybe even let something age for a fairly long time, and then kind of slow it down, kind of pump the brakes on it as it gets a little bit older too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, while you were talking, I was kind of doing a side-by-side on the nose. The only thing that I noticed for me is this one has a little bit more of that, I want to say caramel, vanilla, and it has more of that orange or marmalade stuff that you were talking about. It has a little bit more of it, whereas the other one's a little more subtle. This one is a little stronger. And on the taste, it's everything in that one just kind of dialed up to 10, and so it's really cool. I'm guessing they're the same exact whiskeys, one's just proofed down a little bit. And so, I mean, it's a really cool comparison to see, hey, this is what it's at cask strength, and this is what it's at release strength. And you can kind of see that you're not, I mean, it is drastically different, but it's not, you're not losing anything on the lower proof. You're just gaining more on the cask strength. You're getting more viscosity and more, I like to use the word unctuous. I like to use that word a lot. That's the sommelier in me. It wants to use all these highfalutin words. But it's super clingy to the glass. It's just a lot richer, I would say. And when I say a lot, I don't mean like 100 times. It's like, a little bit more, not a lot.
The way Chris says is as if like the artist is rock and roll, then the cask strength is heavy metal. It's all great music. You just kind of turn the volume up.
Yeah. It's like Spinal Tap. Turn it up to 11, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So okay. Let me ask, and this can be a personal question, however you want to go about it. What is your guilty pleasure drink that is not whiskey?
So like the one that I feel guilty that I wouldn't tell people about, that one?
No, like something that that you're like mine is I like to have a gin and tonic every once in a while, or I've been really getting into Pachuga, having Pachuga every once in a while, something like that.
So I'll be honest, I'm an equal opportunity drinker. And I'm not a massive drinker. I'm more about the experience and with food and so on and so forth.
Right.
So it can vary. I'd probably say my go-to would be like an Islay Scotch. I do enjoy gin from now and again. My like true guilty pleasure is probably like French Chenin Blanc, like Vouvray or something like that.
Okay.
So because I got a wine background too, so like it's actually, if you don't mind me telling a personal story, since it was when we just did a trip to Washington, and a bunch of us whiskey guys, and it was probably one of the most nice things where, did a couple winery tours, so on and so forth, and we're just sitting around looking at each other, just, wine is a lot easier to drink than whiskey, isn't it? It's like, I'm just so used to, drinking whiskey out of the barrel on a 100-degree day. I forgot what it was like to slow down.
Slow down and actually be like, oh, this is nice. That's funny.
Sorry, that's a little off topic. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. And that's the thing. Like it doesn't matter to me. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that their go-to is they like beer, like craft beers and stuff like that. So, it's really kind of up in the air. I stay in my lane, like I stay in the whiskey world. Like I say, every once in a while, I like to have a gin and tonic, especially when it's 1,000 degrees outside. But it's just one of those things. But most of the time, we're drinking some water because got to hydrate. But yeah, no, it's really interesting to see the flavors coming off of these two whiskeys. Even though they're very similar, they're very, very different in the same aspect. So tell us a little bit about your bourbon that you've released, and what is the mash bill on that again?
70% Texas white corn, 25% Bracetto rye, 5% Wildfire English pale malted barley.
That's why. See, I use that one in a lot of my whiskey tastings because it is, a Texas whiskey that's not, and this is no offense to Garrison Brothers, but it's not one of those Garrison Brothers going to punch you over the top of the head with a barrel stave. It's a really nice, approachable bourbon that you can just, that you can sit down and have a dram of. And I've gone through multiple bottles doing private tastings for people and stuff, and they really enjoy it. They think it's a 10-year-old Kentucky whiskey by the time they actually try it. They're like, man, that's really subtle. They think it's finished or something like that just because of the complexity that's coming off of it with it being distilled, and like you say, all the things that you guys do to it, it just presents in such a unique way. I feel. I don't know.
Oh, I think that's a great way of putting it. I mean, John, when it came to doing the mash bill, he used his the KISS philosophy: keep it simple, stupid. He's just like, I mean, we know we're going to use corn, got to use bourbon. Like, he's a big fan of rye. We experimented with wheat at the time too, so he's just like, let's just up that. Let's just do 25%. That way we can taste the flavor grain. Add a little bit of malted barley in there to make fermentation a little bit easier. If we use a really high quality malted barley, we might add a little bit of fruit in there, and boom.
Yeah, and the fact that you guys aren't just using like a 2-row distiller's malt or something like that, it really does make a difference, because there's a bunch of distilleries that are trying, just even though you're only using a small amount of it, trying a biscuit malt or a different type of malt, which I know you can't do that for like every run because it is going to give a flavor variance, obviously. But at the same time, you can still try with it, and like you say, you guys want to innovate and want to try new things, but obviously you can't. You have a core range that you have to keep in check. Okay, so where was I? Oh no. Okay, and this is a personal question as well. If you could share a drink with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. Drink with any historical figure. Man, that's a really hard question, actually.
And it doesn't. You don't even have to use historical. It can be a family member. It can be somebody that's still alive, somebody that's been gone for a long time.
Trying to think. It might be fun. Who I'd like to have a drink with? I'd like to have a drink with, I forget his name now. All of a sudden I'm blanking. The guy that started Centauri back in the 1920s. I would have loved to know what took a, guy that, countries, like half a century removed from feudalism. Yeah. It's just like, Scotch is fantastic. I'm going to go to Scotland and learn how they do this. Also, I would love to have a drink with Paul P. John from Paul John Distilling. I was lucky enough to meet him, but we didn't get to sit down and have a drink and chat. But kind of for the same thing, it's just like, how do you go from that's 0 to 100 as far as making spirits goes? Like that to me, that's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. What is it, Mazataka Takasuru?
Yes, I do believe so.
I got him. Oh gosh. Yeah, no, I mean it's really interesting because there's so many people out there. I had one person tell me Dave Pickerel, something like that, something as simple as that. the cool thing, and if you can talk about this is great. The cool thing is you have a legend that graces your halls quite a bit. Is that correct? You have Nancy, not the still, that comes up there quite a bit and helps you guys out. Tell us a little bit about that, because Nancy Fraley to me is the godmother of blending. You know, she's the bee's knees. In my opinion.
Knows. Yeah, Nancy's incredible. I'm lucky enough to have helped organize our interior tasting panel, and that helps do some sensory analysis. And we were able to spend a lot of time with Nancy, kind of learning her process and whatnot. And she is one of the most talented nosers and tasters you will ever meet, not just with whiskey, but with everything. Right. She has a superhuman palate and nose. But she is also one of the most down-to-earth, cool, relaxed, just fun-loving people. Like, despite her, I guess, celebrity in our industry, you would never know. She is just the nicest, sweetest person on the face of the planet. I love Nancy. If you're listening, I love you. You're awesome.
We love you, Nancy. I've been trying to get in contact with her for a little bit to come on and tell us about her story. It'll happen one day. I'm not bugging on it because I know she's busy, and she just did she just win
Master Blender of the Year for a while?
Blender of the Year, like, yeah. What are we doing? I mean, well deserved, obviously, well deserved. But she is a powerhouse, and so is she doing? And I don't want to preface this. Is she doing a cigar blend for y'all as well?
So we have a product coming out later this year. Cross our fingers that Nancy is hoping will. So Nancy's done some cigar blends, but she, in her words, she's never done like a true French cigar blend with whiskey.
Right.
She got the idea from cognac, and she's been trying, she's been making some really good cigar blends, but she wanted to do something like very much in the French style. So for ours, we're using a process called petit eau, or small waters. It's essentially where normally you're adding water to whiskey to proof it down. In this case, we're going to add alcohol to water and then add that to the whiskey. So essentially making fortified water. In practice, how it would work in cognac is they would take a used cognac barrel, they would fill it with water and age it indefinitely. So after a few years, it is not only going to get color, character, but it's actually going to leach some of the alcohol content out of that barrel as well. Once it's around 20% alcohol by volume, that's when you can start using it as these small waters. You'll remove your brandy, and cognac is how they would do it. They would remove their brandy from the barrels. They would put it in large demijohns, like giant glass carboys. And then, so to continue to add barrel influence to their brandy over the course of the years, instead of having it in a barrel, they would add this petit eau, this small water, this fortified barrel flavored water into it. And the idea is you're removing a lot of the esters and a lot of the oils and a lot of some of the tannins that are left behind and some of the alcohol using that water. And then you're adding it back into the whiskey in controlled amounts. So you can control the flavor, you can control the finish. There's a lot of different, things that you can do using this process. But for Nancy, we're really just trying to add this little extra oomph to the whiskey so that you can sip it. And it's maybe take a sip now, and the finish should be long enough that it can contend with the cigar 30 minutes later.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that is a very similar, and this is going to get off in the weeds, but just enjoy the ride while we're going. So that is very similar to something that they do in moonshine distilling, is they take something called Sweetwater, which after they do the distillation run, they have 1, 2, 3% of alcohol coming off. They save that, and they use that to proof their moonshine back with that Sweetwater at the end, which is a lot lower proof, but it's similar in the process. So you have to think that gives a nod to all the old moonshiners out there. They knew what they were doing. They knew they
might be onto something. I actually haven't heard of that. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. Look into it, because it's one of those things where like you're saying, those esters and the congeners are left over in the spirit, and it's basically water. It's basically, or it's what they call near beer. It's like the innate beer, and they would use that to burn their liquid down, and it would give it so much more flavor. Anyway, that was just a side tangent when you said with that. I was like, oh, that's Unfortunately, on my channel, I have to do a lot of research on the entire gamut of whiskey production. So, which is kind of fun, but at the same time, I know way too much about small things all over the place.
Yeah, that's the fun stuff, man. The details are the interesting part.
Absolutely. No, and I'm sorry, guys, if I'm coughing a little bit. My wife got me sick. Guess I shouldn't be kissing on her. But anyway, it's one of those things. I'm getting over it, but it's just one of those things. I get a little cough every now and then, so I apologize. Okay, so if you could create, or you or your brand could create a whiskey mashup with another beverage, a beer, wine, what would it be and what would you call it?
Well, I'm not in charge of naming stuff, so I can't answer that. But I can speak for the distilling team to know that probably the top two things would be a brandy or a rum. We've got a lot of distillers that are fermentation nuts, and as fermentation nuts go, rum is one of the things that becomes more interesting. And then, of course, with John and Nancy, Nancy's particular background with cognac, I know brandy is something that John is very interested in as well.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm fairly good friends with Moose over at Andalusia, and
he is great people too. Shout out Moose.
He is a rum nerd. He is a nerd when it comes to rum, and so he's trying to.
Hey Moose, call me. Let's do a collab.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'll get him in contact with you for sure. He's a crazy animal.
I'll wander over there and see him. He's good.
Yeah, he's good. He's good people. He's good people for sure. For sure. Okay, so I know that you personally don't work in the production facility, but what are some of the, because everybody, when you have a work environment, things happen, pranks go on. What are some of the pranks that y'all guys have done? I know you do a lot of events and stuff like that. What are some of the pranks that you guys have pulled on each other? Because when you're working together, and I'm not to be sexist, but normally it's a bunch of guys working together. Things happen. So what are some of the pranks that y'all have had over the years that you've been in working with them?
So this is going to sound like such a politically correct answer, but this honest is the truth. We really don't play a lot of pranks on each other.
Really?
We have there's like you might jump scare somebody coming around the corner because it's fun, like your typical office and stuff. And yes, that happens in the production area too. Like I am usually the culprit of that if it's happening in the production area because I'm not supposed to be there. But I would definitely say we have a culture of like having fun. I'm just gonna say this. If you dig through our old YouTube videos, you'll see some of the things that Still Austin is kind of known for. And as much fun as you think we're having there, that's how much fun we have at work too. Like it's I don't really know how to say it. Our work environment is otherworldly. We're all Oompa Loompas in the chocolate factory, but it's like the nice version of it with like Johnny Depp, not like the scary Gene Wilder version.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's so cool that like you go to work having fun, and that that says a lot for the owners, for the production team, for everybody on staff. And you guys, how big is your full staff? Do you know that offhand?
So our production staff is fairly small. I'd say probably between 10 and 13 people. We've got our office staff is probably another, like on site, maybe another 12 to 15 people. Tasting room staff's another 12 to 15 people. And then we employ a staff of around maybe 20 sales individuals. And then we also have our bottling team, which is probably the largest unit of our entire staff, which is probably another like 20 people.
Oh wow! Okay.
So it's a fairly big crew. We're a craft distillery, but we kind of built the distillery to grow into, and over the last 7 years, we have grown into that capacity. We went from early on being lucky to produce like 300 to 500 barrels to last year producing almost 7,000 barrels over the year, and so it's to the point now where we're really firing on all cylinders. So we've done a really good job of when there's a need, we're not going to try to make somebody wear 30 hats. We'll bring in, somebody that's wonderful at doing whatever that job is. We, expanded our distilling team a couple years ago, and a lot of our newer distillers are the products that they made, 3 and 4 years ago, or some of the products you guys are starting to drink right now. And I think we've only gotten better as time's gone on too.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And you were saying earlier about the still. Do you run it 24 hours a day for 5 days?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I was just making sure. And so with it,
so that's 6 barrels every 6 hours. We can produce around 125 barrels a week if everything goes swimmingly.
Right. And so what the listeners might not know is a continuous still, as long as you're feeding it wash or beer, whatever you want to call it, as long as you're feeding it that, you're distilling. It automatically vaporizes it and does what it's got to do. Now, you're fermenting on the grain, is that correct?
Fermenting on the grain, you said?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. We got oatmeal over there.
Yeah. So
and we do use a sweet mash every time. We're not using sour mash. It's a new mash every single time. Okay, that's really interesting. And you guys have a very fast ferment. Is that correct? Yeah, it's like 3 days. Hot and fast, between 3 and 5 days.
3 and 5 days.
Wow. Around 88 degrees. Yeah.
Woo. But they are temperature controlled, because being in Central Texas, it could get way above that.
Yeah. If we were to not, we have cooling jackets. We use 100% water cooling, which is also interesting.
Oh, really?
We use the wastewater from our reverse osmosis water production. We filter it, chill it, and then that's the water that we use for our cooling system for all the fermenters and both of the stills. So we try to keep them. We use those the jackets with that cooling water around the tanks to try to keep everything at a nice temperature.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's
yeah. Okay, so this might be a little bit up your alley. What trends do you see happening in the whiskey, not just your brand, but in the whiskey community? Everybody was really big into the honey finishing and the Amberana finishing and stuff like that. I don't know if y'all dipped into that at all or not, but now, what do you see the trend going towards now?
Man, if I knew that, I'd be making a lot more money. I'll tell you that. From where I'm standing, I think, and I can really only speak for Texas whiskey. I can't really speak for the grand scheme of craft spirits. I kind of think the trend is moving towards specialization and localization. Yes. I think anyone who is not already is trying to figure out ways to get everything as close to home as possible. Yep. And I think a lot of distilleries, even some of the big ones, are like, all right, let's kind of chop down the fat in our portfolio and really focus on what we're really good at. I think that's what us at Still Austin, we've got 2 mash bills and gin. Everything else is fun. We kind of focus really on that, and it's just kind of interesting seeing the rest of the industry kind of, at least Texas, kind of doing kind of the same thing. So we're glad that we learned that lesson before we ever had to learn that lesson.
Early on, absolutely. Because I mean, we've talked about this multiple times, but terroir is a thing, and having your grain and everything from the area where you're making it does make a difference, and it does come through in the spirit, I feel, because a spirit, and this will get spiritual, I guess, if you want to do that, but a spirit is just that. It's an invoking of all of the things around it, the people in it, the people that are distilling it, the brand reps, everything. If you're not happy about it, if you're not happy about your brand, and it shows, the whiskey's going to taste like crap. I'm sorry, it is. If you're like, here, try this, I don't care, whatever. It's not going to taste good. But if you're excited about your brand, and if you're excited about what you're putting in the bottle, then it's going to show in the bottle, I feel. And that's just my personal opinion.
Man.
I'm not saying anything for you, but at the same time, I really hope that everybody feels that way, and everybody wants to put their best foot forward in that glass, because at the end of the day, it's the consumer that really matters. But also, if you're not making a good product, obviously that's a bad thing as well. Because I've had some people that had a great backstory and you can tell they copy pasted it off of somewhere and put it on the back of their label, and you're like, oh man, that's a really cool story, but the whiskey tastes like crap, So it's like you got to put your heart into it. And I feel like Still Austin and you especially are doing that, because we've had the pleasure to meet a couple times, and you've always been a powerhouse for the brand, and I applaud you for that.
Appreciate you.
Okay, so
it's an easy brand to love.
Absolutely. So y'all just released recently a whiskey called Rare Stock. Can you get into that a little bit? I don't have a bottle of it. I wasn't able to grab one. I did grab the rye Madeira finished. I need to go pick that up at the distillery. I'm trying to break out of work tomorrow. Maybe I'll swing up there. Who knows?
I'll be there. The Rare Stock. So Rare Stock is interesting. So for anyone that doesn't know, at the distillery only, every month we do a single barrel pick that Nancy herself picks. She picks from the oldest and the best stock that we have. Basically, as our single barrel manager, John, our barrel manager, Ryan, are going through sampling barrels, administering slow water reduction. If they find a barrel that has not seen slow water reduction, that is perfect. They will just set it aside, and that becomes part of Nancy's stock of single barrels.
Right.
Well, Sean Trappell, our master distiller, he has started doing his own single barrels. But as opposed to picking from just the bourbon or the mash bill perfect ones, he's the guy that buys the grain. So he's decided to start releasing a lot of his interesting one-off mash bills and experiments that turned out just really, really good. So the Rare Stock that was just released was, if you're familiar with our blue corn bourbon mash bill that we do for the winter bottle and bond. Sorry, there's so many B's in that, it's hard for me to say. So that is, let's see, it's 26% blue corn, 25% white corn, 44% rye, 5% barley. Well, John's like, this is awesome. I love this mash bill. What would happen if I took out the white corn, added blue corn, and malted all the blue corn? So it's 51% malted blue corn, 44% rye, 5 barley, and it is its own kind of thing. It's very, this sounds weird, but it's very like Speyside Scotch-like. Like it's got like sugar cookie and butter cookie and like all these really, really crazy kind of. So that was the first one. We talked about French oak earlier. Later in the year, we'll be releasing his second Rare Stock barrel, which will be the 100% rye mash bill that we do, aged entirely in new French oak.
Ooh.
Yeah,
wow.
It's delicious. Okay. It's delicious. So John's got a whole lineup of these, and we'll hopefully start releasing more and more of these over the next year or so. So that'll be, once again, distillery relief only, and kind of just like his counterpart to Nancy's single barrel bourbon, single barrel rye.
Wow. Because the last time, and I think it's been the only time I went to the distillery was when the red corn had just came out and it wasn't even distributed yet. And I went up there and picked up 2 bottles. I think it was right when. Now, anyway, and then there was a Nancy pick of the cast strength bourbon as well, and I picked up that. But I didn't do a tour. I didn't do any of the things because, when your wife is with you, she's like, I don't want to do that. Let's go. So it's just one of those things. You gotta make her happy. Cause she lets you buy 3 bottles of whiskey. Right. So just make her happy, but, tell us a little bit about your tour experience. If you know anything about that, which I'm sure you do. Is it just walk through the warehouse and there you go, or do you have like a special tasting panel or anything with that?
Actually, so I helped design the tour experience along with our tasting manager, or our tasting room manager, Mary Santo, and our former education director, Josh Madeir. So the idea behind our tour experience is that usually when you go to tours, it's honestly, most of the time, if you walk into a room, someone's like, here's the barrels. You ask them a question. I got to ask somebody. Then, you go look at some more barrels. There's a still. You take some tastes that are probably too big than what you should have had for the day. Yeah. And then they, kick you out. So for us, we wanted it to be more than just like a show and tell, and we wanted it to be a little bit more, not just educational, but entertaining, kind of like infotainment, if you will. Like, so I always like to say you can bring a bachelorette party to one of our tours, and the bachelorettes will come out knowing a lot more about whiskey, but they will also have told you that they had some of the most fun they've ever had at a distillery tour.
I love that.
Our tour guides are experts on the little things, like if you want to like get in the weeds on esterification, slow water reduction, like the beta amylase, you want to get really weird with them, they'll get really weird with you. But they also know how to read a room, and if you guys are just there to have a good time, take some great pictures, they will show you around, and they will be great. So it's really the kind of perfect kind of tour, I will say. I don't want to say this one thing or another, because these guys are all trained to kind of be able to deliver whatever you want out of the best of that tour.
Right.
They're equipped with all the knowledge that you could ever want. A lot of these guys are, former, brewery, other distillery employees. So they came in here, with more of a background than tour guides typically have. So it's really, really great. I highly recommend our regular tour experience for the tasting room. And then in the fall, we should be bringing back our Rickhouse tour experience, which is like a very premium tour experience, where you will meet at the distillery. We give you a quick 20-minute once over of the distillery, show you the barreling spot, show you fermentation, walk through the still, how all that works, all that kind of fun stuff. And then we load you onto a bus, give you some snacks, drive you out to where our Rickhouse is, which is about 40 minutes from the distillery, out in the middle of this beautiful antelope farm. And you get to do a whole Rickhouse tour and tasting experience, which is next level. We do catered food for it, get some food out there, drive you back to the distillery, and get you set on your way. So that's always a really, really fun, super informative, and gives you an opportunity to taste things that most people don't get to taste. Unreleased products, former distillery reserve products, upcoming Nancy's picks, John's picks, rare stocks, single barrels. So it's a really great experience.
That sounds amazing. Sign me up for a fall one.
You don't want to go out there today, that's for sure.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, no, it's too hot today. Even though, there is some cloud cover and it's cooling off a little bit, it's still 100 degrees outside. So, all right, I'm not going to keep you a whole lot longer. I just had one more question. So you said this is personal, but you said you really enjoyed Islay Scotch. So if your life were a whiskey, what would the flavor profile be on it?
Lafroig 10 cast strength.
Absolutely. I love it.
Like, I don't even have to think about that. Like that whiskey is the story of my life. It's a little turbulent, but in the end, it's fantastic. It's a one of a kind experience that anyone would be lucky to be able to live.
Now I will tell you, they just released a newer batch of cast strength Lafroig 10s. I don't know if you saw them at Total Wine had some the other day. I did not pick one up because I had already got the Bruichladdich 18, and I was like, I can't afford too much scotch, So I had to choose, and I think I choose the right one because the Bruichladdich 18 is amazing. But Bruichladdich, you can't go wrong. I know we're talking about Still Austin, but Scotch is awesome too. So I'm glad to find another Scotch nerd. That's fun. All right, so I appreciate you coming on here. This was a lot of fun, guys. Go out, get you some Still Austin. If you don't know about them already, these guys are blowing up. Tell us a little bit about your distribution and where they can find Still Austin proper.
Well, if you are in Texas, Louisiana, Colorado, or Illinois, we are nationally distributed in those states. You can find us pretty much everywhere. Other than that, we are Total Wine Spirits Direct in, I think, 27 other states. So if you're unsure, go to our website. There's a little where to buy kind of section. You can type in your zip code, and it will pop up any of the nearest liquor stores near you that sell us. You can always, of course, order online directly from us, and from most states. I think we ship to like another 40 states or so. And then, of course, for those of you in control states and whatnot, check out your online retailers, your shared pours, your reserve casks, your seal box, all those guys. Also keep a lookout for our single barrels. Basically, if there is a retailer, those retailers have had a chance to do single barrels, and we have a real single barrel program. We don't just ship out a barrel. We actually invite all of these retailers, restaurant owners, so on and so forth, up to meet our single barrel manager, Christian Wilhoff, at the distillery. We taste them through specifically chosen barrels that have vastly different flavor profiles. So I think the single barrel program is a great way to kind of learn about the stranger things that Still Austin does, and also get a lot of our older age statements if that around 3 years age statement is not really your bag.
So this is another question that just popped up, and then I'll let you go. Are y'all thinking about releasing a age stated whiskey at any point?
So actually, the red corn bottled and bond that is out now has an age statement printed on it that is 5 years of age. The bottled and bond that comes out in the fall, which will be the straight bourbon, so the bourbon mash bill that you see in the cask strength, and that will be the first widely distributed 6-year-old bourbon that we'll have out on the market. And then from there, just talking about age, John and Nancy have been doing a lot of experiments, and so this isn't something you're going to look forward to soon, but previously, where we might have thought, and I think a lot of Texas distillers thought, maybe 6, 7, 8, we might be lucky if we get to 9 or 10. That's kind of where Texas whiskey is going to max out. Those are going to be some oaky boys. We believe now that we might be able to get to much higher double digits, things that kind of rival Kentucky age statements. We might be able to get to 10, 15, 20, 21. Time will tell. But we're really, really excited with some of the results of the experiments that we're doing. Okay,
that is awesome. Not that I'm an age stated, person. I don't care if the whiskey's good, the whiskey's good. But it's just cool. Like when you're, especially Texas, if you're able to put an age statement on it, it really, I feel like a lot of other people look at that and be like, okay, that's a cool thing. All right, I appreciate you coming on here, hanging out with me. It's been a lot of fun. Y'all make sure you check all the links down below. I'll have everybody's down there, their website, all their stuff, a bio of everything they're doing. I appreciate it. Y'all be good. Be safe. Drink water. It's freaking hot. And until next time, keep your spirits up.